This is Thailand Terrestrial Broadcasting, brought to you from Bangkok. Greetings from monsoon-swept Bangkok. It's a warm 89 degrees, with the gods of thunder dancing the light fantastic in the sky up above. This week, we found out that a foreign douchebag can get a month-long prison sentence for nudging a Thai citizen with his foot, while Pate, a security guard, will get the keys to the city for soccer kicking a farang in the face. According to the Moscow Times, thousands of Russians discovered that their Bangkok bank cards are no longer working, which, the newspaper reports, may be connected with efforts to stop money laundering. Westerners have noticed a 900% increase in hot Russian women who now view them as viable sexual partners. In other news, a TikToker found a jar with an occult doll in the Bing River. Looking for a viral moment, the TikTokers opened the jar and removed the nail that had been driven through the doll's heart. That immediately awakened Yig, the father of serpents, from his slumber. Having existed through infinities of chaos, Yig was pleased to see that Donald Trump was carrying out the great old one's work of unrelenting cosmological horror, and promptly went back to sleep. Now that housekeeping is out of the way, let's get down to business. The topic of today's report: what are we doing here? Sitting at a nice cafe in Thong Lo on a rainy day a few weeks back, I was speaking with an acquaintance, a therapist who intensively studied meditation for years, about what I feel like I've lost with the advent of mobile phones. The loss is twofold. First, in many ways, I feel like my life is less rich because I use my phone more than I should, and have thus degraded my own ability to focus. Focus allows for mindfulness, which allows you to fully sink into and experience the moment. It's basically the key to happiness and knowing who you truly are. I sadly have ceded ground to the void by habitually looking for distraction. What's sad is it appears that I use my phone a lot less than other people. The number of people with question mark necks everywhere I go is astonishing. You won't catch me frozen halfway down a SkyTrain stairway at rush hour because I care more about what's on my telephone screen than the hundreds of people trying to get around me. I won't get mad at you for bumping into me because I was doom scrolling down Sukhumvit Road rather than looking where I was going. Which leads me to the second point of loss. People have changed as well. Even if I had the luxury of banishing smartphones from my life forever, I would still live in a world where mobiles are moderating my interactions with others. It's quasi-dystopian. If you had made a movie 60 years ago where people were roaming the streets, staring into little boxes that churned out slot machine-inspired, computer-generated slop that robbed their attention and destroyed their ability to think critically about the world, people would have rightly brought on comparisons to Brave New World. And that Brave New World, my friends, is ours. My therapist acquaintance heard me out, but as a person with a far better temperament and self-mastery, he also pushed back. Being a decades-long student of Buddhism, he directed me toward two fundamental truths. One, I was attached to a time and a place that is gone. That attachment is at the root of my suffering. I will never get to live in a world again where people and how we relate to each other isn't mediated by mobile phones. Well, unless we finally James Dean ourselves right off of a cliff, which, based on the science which half of my country doesn't believe in, is a distinct possibility. While that sounds bleak, my friend also reminded me that our ability to perceive the world and its depths have remained fundamentally the same. At no point in human history has anyone ever lived anywhere but in the moment. If I really sit down and am mindful, I will see that this moment is just like every other moment I've ever been aware of. Nothing has changed in my innate capacity to experience depths or joy. Separating the signal from the noise, inevitably, is another matter. So while it's true that the world has changed and not all of those changes fit my own personal taste, I am responsible for being fully present in my own life and connecting with others. But recognizing my need to take a handle on my reactions to modern living does not mean I am entirely wrong to speak out or hope for better. As noted in works like The Rebel Cell and The Century of the Self, the countercultural hippie appeal to being the change you want to see in the world proved fertile ground for co-opting people's need to feel special within the capitalist system. Merely being the best Jew does nothing to address collective action problems. If mobile phones and the algorithmically driven AI slop they deliver are deeply hurting society, if they really are rewiring children's brains and crippling kids' ability to be, personally opting out likewise serves the self over the collective. And, as someone who finds myself at home in Thailand, I'm a fan of the collective. In starting a YouTube channel about Thailand, a relatively niche topic, I've alienated most of the demographically specific viewer base through not dumbing down my language, or ideas they may find unpalatable. My complete lack of editing chops also doesn't help. Still, pushing back against the social media machine, I believe it's necessary to use my own voice and discuss something that really does bother me, how depth and authenticity are de-incentivized. This is a losing battle, but at least it gives me the opportunity to work out my own thoughts on the matter, and potentially make a person or two out there know they're not alone. Anyone who's ever typed in a phrase in their YouTube search bar knows that if you watch a video or two, something not so curious happens. You will get inundated with a bunch of other videos on the same topic. That's logical enough on the surface. The dude has looked up a few videos on adjusting his motorcycle clutch cable. Maybe he likes fixing motorcycles. Let's recommend a bunch of videos on fixing motorcycles to him to capture his attention. I won't go down the rabbit hole on how this has served as a vehicle of disinformation and political radicalization. My complaint today is one of aesthetics. For example, if you type in the name Johnny Somali, the dude facing jail time in Korea for antagonizing and disrespecting the country via livestream for clout and money, you're going to realize something pretty quickly. There's a couple of accounts to my knowledge, Legal Mindset being the most prominent, who are actually producing original content on the matter. He talks to real people with real knowledge about the case and then presents that information to the world. Even though YouTube is the domain of pundits, there's at least some overlap with traditional journalism there. But the rest of the people producing content on Johnny Somali are essentially regurgitating what Legal Mindset says and doing their best to game the algorithm to redirect traffic to their channels. The end result is that most of what's out there on this topic, admittedly a useless topic, is baby bird emetic. Mama bird gathers the food, chews it up, and spits it out to their audiences. But in a grossly iterative process, the baby birds eagerly take the mush and spit it back into the mouths of their increasingly smaller audiences. It's like using one cassette tape to re-record the content of increasingly muddled Chinese whispers. Every successive attempt at replication is more degraded than the one that preceded it. It's all essentially worthless. It could be Jungian psychology, Stoicism, and for our purposes here, Thailand. You'd really have to dig through all of the slop on any given topic to find something that isn't just a poor retelling of someone else's concept. These platforms are not designed to elevate scholars or people with expertise to the foray. The algorithm does nothing more than identify and serve up the content that is statistically most likely to eat up your time. There was always a problem in the television era of people choosing to watch garbage over quality programming. But at least then, the actual news and cultural content was handled by people who ostensibly knew something about news and culture. That system and its gatekeepers weren't perfect, but as people often say, we did used to share a common set of facts about the world. We disagreed about what to do, but not on the facts themselves. Those days, and the days when most people thought that the people who dedicated years of their lives to deep study about topics might be best suited to educate others on those topics, are gone. Thomas Nicholas of the Naval War College has called this phenomenon the death of expertise. Of course, there's no PhD in being an expat or a Thailand nomad. I'm also not advocating for credentialism in every facet of the YouTube space. I'm merely expressing a desire that people who make content about places learn something about those places, or at least try to offer a unique perspective. Yet many of them, for all intents and purposes, have no perspective. They have put the cart before the horse. Their desire to create and monetize content is vastly prioritized over having anything to say, and to monetize, people seek out ways to placate the algorithm. The current YouTube ecosystem stands in stark relief to old school YouTube, which was far less polished, regimented, and homogenized. Still, a glossy nothing has far less value than an amateurish something that has some pathos and grit. Back then, people were simply amazed they could show themselves and their talents to the entire world. Now people are bending themselves into the shape of a sum dictated by a soulless set of mathematical formulas. They also surrender to audience capture, changing their positions to placate their viewers' need for confirmation bias. Louis C.K. bemoaned the perils of this shift during an interview on whether comedians needed to play the social media game to be successful. He says that artists have passions and obsessions which they are driven to engage with creatively and to express as their own voice. As a comedian, he has to balance that with what audiences, real people, think about his creative offering to the world. Real artists obsess over finding ways to get the audience to get you, rather than merely pandering to them. In essence, you are trying to find a way to be as authentic in your vision as possible, and have more people embrace that. The hope is that if you do something worthwhile, people might share it with a friend or two, and then they share it with friends, and on and on and on. But he said in trying to serve the algorithm, people try to shave away as much of their authentic voices as possible in order to fit into the keyhole that opens the door to large audiences, all for the benefit of an artificial brain. And so much of the Thailand content industry reflects that very thing. People reiterating the same tired takes on mass tourism, Isan wives, condo living, and street food. There is so much to say about this place, and most everyone who is anyone in this space keeps repeating some variation of the same old nothing. Getting back to my conversation with my therapist acquaintance, he spoke of the illusion of boredom. He told me there is so much going on here right now. If you are really present, you will never be bored. He said just mining the depths of your own physical experience of the world is more than enough to hold your attention and lead you to joy. The same is certainly true of Thailand. In this wild, chaotic capital I live in, every time I step out of my house, I am presented with an opportunity for walking meditation. For example, I could stroll down by an old building and simply ignore it, or I could give it a glance and say, it's kind of dingy, just a big old rectangle block stained with black mold. It's definitely ugly, and definitely not worth my time to think about. But maybe I linger a few moments longer and ask myself, what's the deal with that great-looking thing on the facade? It kind of looks like a honeycomb. Why is there a honeycomb grate attached to the front of a building? Then, I might ask a Thai friend whose dad works in construction what that thing was. He tells me it's actually called a block chong lom, which provides a number of functions, from shade to ventilation. Its aesthetic features reflect a Buddhist perspective on life and are influenced by tropical modernism. Or maybe I could have just walked by that ugly building and thought nothing at all. In the end, that's my call. But there's so much on offer if you decide to not simply take your environment for granted. Every street you walk down, you are immersed in a world of spirits, gods, and rituals that are wholly fantastical, in which people very much believe in. This rich world of symbols and prompts is having an effect on the people around you. It shapes how they live their lives and see the world, which means they're also having an effect on you. Enter a business and see a red and gold shrine on the ground near the shop's entrance. The Chinese Thai shrine, called Di Jo Ia, is dedicated to the earth god and is intended to bring protection and stability to the family. The odd number of incense sticks, the color red, the placement of the shrine, it is all wrapped in symbolic meaning. By contrast, a hing pra, mounted high on the wall in someone's living room and never over where people sleep, is the spiritual center of the home and very much an expression of Theravada Buddhist faith. Ideally, it should face east, as that's the direction Buddha was facing when he obtained enlightenment, according to tradition. Maybe you're walking down an alley and you see a prayer written in ancient Khmer on a building's wall. Perhaps the residents are seeking protection or the banishment of a malevolent force. Across the street, you may notice offerings of black coffee or jelly beans, which are intended for Prarahu, a deity adapted from Hindu cosmology for Thai Buddhist purposes who has dominion over Wednesday night. Speaking of days, each day of the week in Thailand has a corresponding color, also influenced by Hinduism, and many Thais will dress accordingly. That Thai royalists adopted the color yellow comes from the fact that the current king and his father were born on Monday, which is associated with Chandra, the Hindu god of the moon. These are just a few examples of the wondrous world that opens up to you when you leave the house with eyes wide open. You could spend a lifetime trying to untangle every expression of ritual and the sacred you might stumble upon while strolling across town. The beliefs, customs, and hopes of various peoples who have intermingled since antiquity are all sliced, diced, and remixed into something wholly unique and Thai. And that is one of the real beauties of this country. Just like its food, Thailand's culture expresses itself as a vibrant and beautiful blend. Every ingredient tells a story of the movement of the world. That's also true of actual ingredients used in food. For example, Portuguese traders and missionaries brought chilies to Thailand at some point between the 15th and 17th centuries. That's right, the first thing you think about when you think about Thai food is the result of Europeans bringing a plant from the Americas, and then Chinese traders brought them back home. That indeed is how the world works. By contrast, Marco Polo in fact did not bring pasta back from China to Italy. It's a good story though. All of this is a long-winded and meandering way, my way, of getting back to the original point. Even something as simple as the chili pepper taunting you from the side of your plate tells a grand story of pain and conquest, but also adventure, sharing, and change. What looks like a scribble on a wall harkens back to thousands of years of religious tradition and the movements of peoples. Any which way you look, the depths on display are endless. So why do we need 100,000 videos on things you can buy in 7-Eleven? How many full moon party videos can the market tolerate? How much of the Thai YouTube market needs to be dominated by retirees pretending they are better than tourists, or looking for ways to keep people out of their paradise? I'm not saying YouTubers have to recreate masterpiece theater, nor do you have to care about architecture, history, or religion, but shouldn't Thailand-based YouTubers care about Thailand? A lot of folks treat Thailand as nothing more than a backdrop for their anodyne adventures. Even those brave enough to marry that mysterious creature called an Isan wife often treat their wives as props of their not-so-fresh remake of The Honeymooners. They, once again, are trying to sell a fairy tale of the middle-aged man who escaped the West and shacked up with a pretty young thing in an exotic locale without a hitch. More than a few of them seem to understand Thailand about as well as they understand their wives. Why don't any of them who claim to love Thailand so much ever take the time to learn anything about Thailand? There are people who have lived here for 30 years that didn't even bother to learn to pronounce the name of the beer they've imbibed thousands upon thousands of times. Which is telling, as it's the topic of a children's song that is used to teach kids about elephants. I was even taught that song at the beginning of my tortured Thai language learning journey. And now, for a musical intermission. I think it's because most people are more interested in the tropical living lifestyle trend than Thailand itself. They're trying so hard to build a world out of postcard-inspired dreams. Theirs is a Thailand of marketing materials, an attempt to turn the aesthetic of a 3-week holiday into a sustainable world and life. Practical matters like condo prices and the state of infrastructure dominate YouTube because that's what most people coming here are concerned about. They want a cheaper life with better weather and easier access to women. The quality of Western food offerings, infrastructure, shopping malls, and grocery stores, along with the ease of acquiring visas and public safety, also play into the equation. And of course there's nothing wrong with being concerned with these things. Practical matters are practical indeed. But I have to ask, why doesn't cultural character ever come into the equation? Why do so few even consider the cultural differences between Thais, Cambodians, or Vietnamese, for example, when deciding where to live? The price of beer? Yeah, you hear a lot about that. And I mean, sure, the cost of food and beverages matters, but when it comes to how Thais and Vietnamese view the world, you hear nary a peep about it. I also don't see any sense of linguistic love as a determining factor, which boggles my mind. For example, people might prefer the Philippines because a lot of people speak English well there. That certainly facilitates a life of convenience. You're bound to hear about how sexy the accent is. But no one is saying, I have a love for Tagalog or Cebuano, and a love of those in other languages has influenced my decision to live there. That sure as hell plays a big role in people deciding where to live in Europe. We all 100% know of people who have lived in France or Italy strictly because of a love of the language. Hell, my Spanish-speaking friends can go on for days about the preferred Spanish dialects across Latin America. But the truth is, a lot of people didn't come to countries in Southeast Asia to immerse themselves in a specific cultural, spiritual, or linguistic world that calls to them. Instead, they are trying to get away from something that isn't quite right back home. They do not address the issues that led them to leave, that often leads them to spend their time with people of a fairly low character. Rather than see those people as a reflection of themselves and their own lifestyle choices, they become enraged at their adopted country, because in so many ways, their adopted country looks so much like them. After complaining on online forums for a few years, they finally jump ship and sail on to the next tropical destination. Their next video, the top 10 reasons why they're not coming back to Thailand. But they never lived in Thailand. They lived in a condo separate from other people. They lived in Western-style bars, and they lived in their heads. Many of them sought out nothing but transactional relationships, and then became enraged they ended up with nothing but transactional relationships. A few performatively put on Buddhist amulets while walking every which way but the Noble Eightfold Path. But what's the point of putting on a show if you're unwilling to see? Maybe it's too much to expect that I'll ever find a lot of presence or depth in the Thailand YouTube sphere. but we owe it to ourselves and our host to try and figure out the culture and beliefs that are informing their lives. Maybe technology has reduced our sense of otherness and distance, but we have all come a long way to be here, and we are farther from here than we think. The more you learn about this place, the more you will see what I mean. That's not a bad thing. It's a great journey we get to embark on every day. The opportunities to grow are boundless, the rewards endless, the challenge is worth it. So please, don't let this beautiful land we live in be nothing more than a pretty backdrop to a self-serving story. You, and this great land, deserve so much more than that. So as this transmission ends, I wish all of you good luck in living your best life in this best of places. And please remember, don't be a stranger to yourself or Thailand.